Hello and welcome to another episode of the PHA Podcast. My name is Stefan Gillum, your host for the PHA Podcast, and I am delighted to bring with me today Miss Leah Eppinger of the Dauphin County Housing Authority, right?
Yep.
I want to make sure I pronounced it correctly.
Got it.
And we have so many topics that I want to cover today,
Sure.
so many great things, but as with everyone, I kind of want to start with your story. How did you get here? How did you stumble into housing? Because I haven't spoken to anybody yet that was like, I graduated college and I knew I wanted to be in housing. That's what I was going to do.
That's a fair question. So I have a degree in city and regional planning.
Okay, so you were going to be in housing.
I did it on purpose. So my degree is actually closer to land planning, land development. So I came into planning right out of college into grad school. And then I worked at the Dauphin County Planning Commission for 7 years. And in that time, I worked a lot with the Housing Authority.
Right.
And like all good executive directors, there needed to be a succession plan. It turns out that was me.
Okay.
So that's how I guess, stumbled into housing.
I love it. So what's your favorite thing about being in the housing industry right now, being in the affordable housing industry specifically?
I think we're really keyed up for great growth.
Yeah.
And we have the opportunity because we have the ear of the world. And in planning and in housing, that's sort of never the case. And we have an opportunity to be really successful, and it's fun to be a part of that.
Now, Dauphin's doing some pretty innovative, pretty strategic things with your PHA. Tell us a little bit about some of the maneuvers that you guys are making right now.
Sure. So the Housing Authority, we run a public housing program. We run an HCV program, and we do the building blocks.
Right.
We also have a nonprofit that allows us to do development. We've started in the last 18 months a transitional housing program, partnering with our children and youth department to try to keep families housed. It comes with a side of case management to allow people to be successful. And in that 18 months, we have already graduated 3 families who are now in permanent housing.
Nice.
Which is awesome, and we're thrilled.
Yeah.
And we're going to continue working through that. And it's a great, fun program. And the most fun about it is that we self-funded it. So we have no regulatory oversight from HUD or PHFA or any, obviously, landlord-tenant law.
Right.
But those are the standards. So it's a little bit freeing to have a program where we can make the rules. And it allows us to be a little bit more nimble, making sure, responding to human need as opposed to on an individual level.
Right.
As opposed to trying to answer the housing problem for the whole world.
Right. Now, it's interesting you said you all started a nonprofit. I've seen a few PHAs that are going that route of starting their own nonprofit. Talk to me about what made you make that decision. What caused you to make that decision and how it's been beneficial for Dauphin County?
Sure. So we actually opened the nonprofit in 2012.
Okay. So you're OGs in this.
We'd like to think so. I don't know if we're that cool. But we originally did it because we applied for an 811 grant through HUD, and we have 12 units associated with the original project. And then we've done and partnered for 2 additional LIHTC projects where we've been larger partners in that, and gives us an opportunity for ownership and management as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so what all are you doing with the nonprofit?
So in 2021, we opened our last LIHTC project, 49 units of senior housing, which was difficult as we pigeoned right into COVID. So that was a fun adventure where we learned a lot.
Right.
But we are in the profit now of trying to be a little creative in our financing and trying to do 148 units outside of LIHTC, doing mixed finance and more traditional financing, again, to reduce the regulatory burden. We're doing programs like the transitional housing program, which we plan to expand. Being a nonprofit, it opens us up as well to a lot of more funding options. So we're not hitting the standard CDBGs and home, which are great programs.
But you just have more available.
But we just have more available, and we have the opportunity to own things.
Right.
So we can use it as collateral.
Very nice. Very nice. Now, you guys have done a lot on the development side. How have you overcome some of those obstacles that PHAs run into when they're trying to get into the development aspect of being a housing authority?
Sure. So I think one of them, and I'll toot my own horn, is me. I
Oh,
come from a planning.
everybody needs a Leah then.
Yeah, I come from a planning degree, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm very able to navigate some of the traditional stumbling blocks of the development side,
Right.
the zoning, the subdivisions, all those things. I've written some ordinances in Dauphin County back in the day, so I sort of know how to use them to our advantage, and that gives us an opportunity to be successful. Relationships is really something that people can overlook when trying to do development. You cannot have too many good relationships.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Very
yeah.
nice. Now, in doing some of that development, you'll also find, there's a lot of different types of restrictions, regulations. There's different types of rules you got to follow. There's an ordinance for everything.
Sure is.
There's a legislation for everything. How do you keep the channels of communication between your agency and HUD wide open so that they have a full understanding of what you guys are doing on the ground level and you guys have a full understanding of why they're implementing some of the things they're implementing?
Yeah, so some of that is hard, to be perfectly frank. There's so much information. It's an information overload right now. I mean, right now you have Nspire happening,
Yes.
HOTMA is happening,
Yes.
other regulatory changes are occurring. So it's an overload, I think, on PHAs right now trying to keep up
Right.
or, God forbid, keep ahead. And with the capacity issues that a lot of housing authorities are struggling with maintaining staff or having older staff retire and losing some of that
Right.
institutional knowledge, it's really hard to do that. So one of the things that I try really hard to do is maintain a great relationship with my field office. I talk to them probably more than they want to hear from me, and probably tell them things they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that's, we have to be our own advocates. We always talk about residents being advocates for themselves to,
Right.
better their situation. Well, PHAs have to do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of great things, and HUD has done a ton of great things, but sometimes we get lost in the regulation,
Right.
and it creates a hardship for the PHAs to do their job.
Okay. What are some of the things that you've put in place at your agency specifically to kind of like gain new efficiencies, streamline your operations? Like everybody, so often I see people, they get so bogged down with doing the day-to-day work.
Correct.
We've got to do the research. We got to do this. We got to do that. We got to
Yeah.
check eligibility. We got to open up the list. We got to close the list. All of those things that they don't get the opportunity to go out and do some of the innovative development type stuff that you guys are doing at Dauphin. So what have you seen has been the key to freeing up your team or even refocusing their direction so that you guys can go and make some of those bigger moves?
Yeah, I think one thing is technology. It's really hard to make that adjustment with new technology. So
Right.
there's a cost benefit on that. You got to pay the cost up front to make sure you're getting that benefit on the back end. So we've implemented more paperless processes to allow us to be more effective. We have actually enhanced and grown our admin, like reception baseline staff.
Right.
And we find that in support of the higher level staff has taken a huge burden away.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people call housing authorities because they need someone to listen.
Right.
They're frustrated. They can't get an answer. And if there's someone on the phone saying, I will listen to you, and I will either give you the answer myself or
Right.
actually call you back with an answer, the phone calls drop, the concern drops, the stress drops,
Right.
and people are able to just do their jobs. And when you can just do your job without all the noise, it's faster.
Because what you find in a case management atmosphere is that most of the time the case manager is trying to fix the problem.
Correct.
I got to fix it because you're one of 37 calls I'm going to get today.
Yep.
Each person has an issue that needs to get fixed.
Yeah.
So my job is to fix the problem. So I'm trying to rush you through what the thing is that you're trying to say. I'm trying
Yep.
to get it out of you. You're not quite sure what it is you're trying to say and all
Yep.
that kind of stuff. So I can see how they could make a really big difference.
Yeah. And the other thing we've done is we've had a large growth in the Spanish speaking population, and we've made a concerted effort to have every person who's the front line who answers the phone is bilingual.
Okay.
Because if you're not comfortable even saying, I don't speak English,
Right.
can you help me? You may never make that phone call, which
Yeah.
means you could get evicted for something that's not your fault.
Yeah.
You could, we could terminate your voucher just because of a miscommunication. And that's not the business we're in.
Right.
So that's something that we've paid particularly attention to over the last 10 to 12 months.
Okay. Now, you spoke earlier about one of the ways you guys were able to make some of the moves that you made was really embracing technology.
Yeah.
What kind of technological advances have you embraced, and how have you seen that has really opened up Dauphin County's operations and enterprise?
Yeah, so we've implemented some, for lack of a better term, checklists.
Okay.
Digital checklists that that our departments follow, and you can't go to the next step on that checklist. It's a workflow. It's a standard workflow. But we've implemented them in leasing. We've implemented them in. We're starting a research portal right now.
Okay.
And it really allows our internal staff to make sure that we're not missing a step.
Gotcha.
And that makes it really clear, because sometimes, you have someone moving out. Okay, so the manager has to know, the assistant manager has to know, maintenance has to know, leasing has to know. All those people all have to know what's happening in one unit.
Yeah.
And that's where balls get dropped.
Right.
Someone put it on your desk, and then
then
10 more things got put on top of it, and no one got to it. So by implementing these sort of online workflows, we've been able to reduce that. Oh, I never got that, or I've never seen that. So we know exactly when people are leaving, exactly when units will be turned, exactly who's moving in, and when they're getting keys.
Nice.
So that's really helped the back and forth on the communication side. As far as I'm concerned, the more communication, the better.
Okay.
So the more people that know, the less opportunity we have to miss something.
Now, how many public housing units do you have?
725.
And how many HCV vouchers do you have?
1,200.
1,200, 725. So how are you not only managing the public housing side, but from an HCV side, how are you interacting with your landlords? How are you making sure your utilization is there?
Yeah.
Improving your lease up? What are you guys doing in that area that really...
So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
We generally do landlord events. We have our second one coming up actually next month. We do one landlord event where we invite anyone who's interested to come in, get information. The second one is more of an appreciation event.
Okay.
Because we want our landlords to know that we appreciate them.
Thank you. Yes. Big time.
We give them some gifts.
Yeah.
Things that allow them to know how much we appreciate their support, their work. Now, this one's going to be a little bit harder because we're going to be introducing Inspire to them, and I'm not sure.
I appreciate you, and we're going to change everything.
And it might get a little harder. So that's going to be a tough one to swallow,
Yeah.
but that's one of the biggest things. That's one of our biggest concerns, is having enough landlords.
Right.
So it's something my staff is really focused on. We have our case manager that works in our transitional side. She also works with a ton of landlords to answer questions. She does outreach to landlords all the time, not just those 2 events a year. But we try the best we can to have a list of available units. Our staff talk all the time, hey, does anyone know of anyone who's got a 2-bedroom? And, it'll go between our case managers to allow us to be successful and get those people in the right spots.
I love it. Yeah. So you're doing all of this work. You got all these public housing units. You got all this development going on, all these HCV vouchers. What's next at Dauphin County? Where are you going in the next couple of years, couple of months?
So the goal really for us, public housing and HCV are going to be what they're going to be.
Yeah, they're there.
They're there. They're going to continue to exist. For us, the big next step is enhancing that nonprofit side and building more units.
Okay.
So we're in a strategic planning process with our board for that nonprofit to see what those priorities are going to be. What is it? Is it programs we need to implement? Is it actual units we're building from the ground? Is it redevelopment of existing units? What does that look like? Or is it some combination of all three, which is what it probably will be. So that's really what our next big goals are, because in the end, the goal is to have that nonprofit exist separately from the housing authority. Let it have its own staff, its own people, and have that be an organization in and of itself, not just sort of a add-on.
I love it. Yeah. So for a lot of our smaller PHAs, sometimes they don't really get the chance to get into these large-scale strategic plans, right? And so tell us a little bit about what that looks like for Dauphin County when you're developing a plan that's a couple of years out, 5 years out, to really achieve a big vision.
Yeah, I think, again, for me, coming from a planning background, this is my wheelhouse. It's so important that you look at priorities and have goals and objectives in mind. It can't be oh, what did you dream up last night? This is going to be a great idea. Let's just go out and do it.
I tell people all the time, everybody's got ideas.
Yep.
They don't matter until you do something with them.
Exactly.
And so we sit in this idea factory where we come up with all of this stuff that we could be doing and should be doing and would be doing and how great it would be to do it. And they never put the strategic steps in place to actually get it achieved.
Yeah. So for us, there's a lot of theory on strategic plans, and that's very academic. And there's lots of books if people are interested.
Plenty
I'm
of them.
happy to recommend some. I've read a lot of them. But what's important for us is that it's implementable. What's not worth your time is sitting in a room with your board and your commissioners or your supervisors, whoever your governing body is, making this plan and then printing it up and putting it on a shelf.
Right.
Never looking at it again.
Exactly.
So that's not going to help you. What's going to help you is creating something that you can actually implement.
Right.
What are those little steps that get you to the big ones? And people, I sometimes think the little steps aren't important. Every step towards your big goal
really does
is important.
Yeah.
Whether it's getting the piece of land 5 years before you need it, you've got it.
Yeah.
You know, you're already step
You're there.
one. Check
You're
that
ready to
box.
go.
Move on. Or whether it's just even having a conversation with a municipality or a school district that's going to say, hey, in about 3 to 5 years, we want to build here.
You got to plant that
What
seed.
do we need to do so that we can make that happen?
Right.
So those are all things that I think people sometimes overlook, and they get these great ideas and they have these great opportunities, but there's no foundation to it, and then it gets lost.
And then I think it's also the idea comes up, and they're so excited about the idea that they want to implement it tomorrow.
Right.
And it's like, no, what you just said is awesome, and it's going to take 4 years to do. And so we've got to take all of the small steps and the incremental steps to get to the place to where 4 or 5 years down the line, we can actually see this thing happen.
That's the hard. It's hard
Right.
because there's so many people in nonprofits and PHAs that have fantastic ideas, and they have ideas that are outside the box, things that have never been done.
Yeah.
And those take time.
They really do.
And everybody wants housing today. That's what everybody wants. They want a turnkey fix to all these problems, which we all want.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist.
No.
Right? There's not a one size fits all fixer right
Yeah.
now. Whoever figures that out is going to be a millionaire. I'll tell
I
you
got
that.
it in my back pocket.
Yeah,
Email me. I'll send it to you.
Exactly.
So, last question. I'm going to step into a land of wonder and magic. You ready?
I'm ready.
It's going to be wonderful.
Great.
Fantastic. So, I'm going to give you this megaphone, magical megaphone, rainbow colored, unicorn horn on the end, sparkles all over it.
Great.
Ready? The thing that's magical about this megaphone is the moment you pull the trigger to start to speak into it, everybody in the world stops what they're doing and listens to you and then does whatever it is you're saying. They actually receive it, they ingest it, and then they move forward on it, whatever it was you said. Now, I'm seeing your face, so this megaphone can only be used for good.
No, that's not.
for evil.
I was going to ask, does it work on 6-year-old boys? I would love it to work for my son.
Yes, he's one of them.
Perfect.
He's one of
Then
them.
I'm in.
And so, magical megaphone, put it in your hand. What do you tell the world?
I tell the world that housing is an opportunity to improve everyone's situation. And the words that we use when we talk about housing matters.
Yeah.
So stigmatizing the housing that we have isn't helping. Talking about opportunity, putting programs in place that will provide opportunity matters.
Right.
So for me, telling everyone in this world, stop over-regulating, allow the people who know about housing to be the housers.
Right.
And I say this to a lot of people, is people need to stay in their lane.
Okay.
Let housers house, let planners plan,
Yeah.
let architects build, right? Everybody's got their world. Let those people be the ones making those decisions.
Right.
If PHA executive directors got to regulate housing authorities, there would be more housing.
Right.
That's what I can say about
Now,
that.
I told you it was the last question, but
you're
you
gonna
messed me
ask-
up. I got to
No,
ask another
that's
question now.
fine.
So you mentioned the stigmatization
Yep.
of housing.
Yep.
What is it that you're looking at on that playing field that you'd like to see changed?
There's a overall thought process that everybody who lives in on a voucher, everyone who works or lives in public housing is there because they want to be.
Right.
And that's not the case. And I think there's a lot of people who, we have some amazing residents. They are single parents who came out of a bad situation, are in school, can't have a full-time job. I can tell you one family I know because I talk to her all the time. She's got 3 kids. One has a disability. He's blind in one eye. She is in nursing school. And she tells me every day, as soon as I graduate and get a job, I'm moving out because I won't need this and someone else will.
Yes.
And that is why we come to work every day,
Yeah.
for people like that. And that is the majority, not the minority. Are there people out there who create that image?
Absolutely.
There absolutely are.
Yeah.
Just like if you live in an apartment building, there's probably that one really annoying neighbor that nobody likes.
And their apartment smells like potatoes, and
it's- and
nobody knows why.
And nobody knows
Yeah.
why. Exactly. Or they have that dog that won't stop
Yeah.
barking all the time. Nobody says anything about them.
Right.
Why are we saying it about our public housing residents or about our voucher holders?
Yeah.
They're people. And we created a system that allows them to improve themselves. We shouldn't talk about them in a way that pushes them back
Right.
down.
And I think it's important that we remember the system is there to allow them to improve themselves. And it's working. We're seeing it work regularly,
All the
over and
time.
over and over again. But I think because we're not talking to the Dauphin counties, because we're not talking to the individual PHAs, and we're looking at it from such a broad landscape and such a big landscape, I think that's where we get away from understanding that it actually is working.
It is.
For a lot of people in a lot of places, they find themselves in a situation they could have never thought was going to happen to them. They get into a PHA, they get into a HCV voucher, they get into a program, and 2 years, 3 years down the line, they've got their kids. They've got their kids going down the right track. They've got the job that they were looking for, and they're ready to move forward to the next stage of their life. And I don't think we talk about that nearly enough.
We don't. What do you see on the news?
Right.
You know, you're seeing overhousing, underserviced,
Right.
violence, security issues.
Yeah.
That's not every place.
Yeah.
It's
few
probably
places,
the
actually.
minority, not
Yeah.
the majority. But that's what gets the news. That's
Right.
what gets the attention of the public. So, you know, we try at the Authority, we have a Facebook page, which frankly, I'm not a social media director, so we try. But we like to, we have residents that we post on there that, you know, give us their stories. We just had a woman graduate from our home ownership program and she bought her first house and she is over the moon. She's thrilled.
Yeah.
She has a great job. She has opportunities that she, you know, came in and she's like, I never thought I could have this.
Right.
But you guys and this program gave me that chance. And I think there's so many programs like that that don't get enough credit and media to do it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate you coming. Leah Eppinger with the Dauphin County Housing Authority joining us today on the PHA Podcast. My name is Stefan Gillum. As always, the PHA Podcast is brought to you by AMA Consulting Group, and I'll see you on the next episode.